Good morning, Speech One. Welcome to day 2 of week 1. At this point, I'm going to recommend you open up your assignment on Schoology using your iPad, because everything I go over today, you can add the answers as we go. That way you can hand in your work by the end of the hour. As you know, your work is due Fridays before midnight. You can always get it in earlier. And some of you already have gotten in excellent work. For those folks, I recommend you follow along and join in today to help review. So today, I'm going to teach anxiety strategies. I'll give some time to practice them. If you're still feeling a little shy and you'd rather practice them later, that's okay. You can then use that time to write down your answer for it. I'm also going to demonstrate some answers for the week 1 handout. And I'll let you know which ones you can take word for word from me and which ones should be yours. So I find the notes by looking for this rose or pink slide. And this week, the information we're learning about came from, well, 3 main sources, 2 pictured here. Coping Skills for Teens, the workbook. That is in, both of these books are in the cabinet by the flag, and then EFT tapping. So yesterday I talked about scheduling your time. Today I'm going to talk about 2 anxiety strategies, tapping and the 3-3-3 rule. So first off, I learned about tapping from my neurologist. I go and see this genius doctor for my migraines. My whole family has them. So she told me this, and I'll quote her because I liked how she taught it to me and how she explained why it works. Now, it works for most people, not all, but here's why. So researchers have theories as to why EFT tapping works, but we aren't entirely sure because the nervous system and the brain have many connections that we're still discovering. So what is EFT tapping? It's emotional freedom technique tapping. And here's a summary, an overview of how it works. And then on the next slide, I'll go through the details and you can go through it step by step with me. So essentially how this works is first identifying what's causing you anxiety, then do the tapping. Usually the tapping is on the karate chop part of your hand, and you can either rub it, scratch it, or tap. It's really up to the person. There's 2 other spots for tapping too that work. Actually, there's 3. You can tap right above the eyebrow, both sides. You can tap your temple. And same thing, if rubbing works better, do that. And then the third place is right above your lip, right here. Now, those last 2 are a little bit harder to hide from other people. My brother adapts this technique by doing karate chop on his leg. So he still gets the benefit of the technique, works out. So again, to recap, you identify the issue, you start tapping, you rate how bad the issue is, and then you re-rate. So let's show you step by step how to do this. First, identify the issue that's causing you anxiety or stress. If you have lots of them, pick the main one or the one that pops to mind first. So I could say something like, all right, I'm anxious, and you can do this in your head or out loud. I'm anxious about all the work I have to get ready for next week. Then I rate the issue on a 1 to 10 scale. 10 mean I'm going to shake out of my skin, unbearable anxiety. 1 mean, it's a mild annoyance. So if I had to rate my anxiety on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say I'm at about a 6 as far as how anxious I am about getting work done next week. Then to get rid of the anxiety, I tap or rub this part while saying an affirmation out loud that acknowledges what you're anxious about and that you're going to be okay. Now, I've written the one that's recommended, which is, even though I describe the thing causing anxiety, I deeply and completely accept myself. So even though I'm stressed about school, I deeply and completely accept myself. If that sounds too hippie-esque for you, change the affirmation. So even though I'm stressed about school, I know I'll be all right. Whatever it is that works for you. They say to repeat that at least 3 times. Then you can add deep breathing as well. That helps. Finally, rate the issue again on a scale of 1 to 10. If you're feeling better, great. If not, they say repeat the process or try another strategy. I'm going to pause at this moment so you can try this out if you haven't already, and so you can write your answer on your handout. Pausing for a moment. Okay, the next strategy, and I'll give you strategies throughout the year. I think it's really important to have different tools to help yourself out. So the next one is called Three Things. This one I use just about daily. It's also known as the 3-3-3 strategy or the 3-3-3 rule or even 3 rule, however you want to call it, doesn't matter. So this is where you go quietly in your mind. You find and list 3 things you can see to start. And this strategy works in 2 ways. One, it distracts your mind from the thing you're anxious about. And 2, it involves movement. Researchers aren't sure why exactly movement helps with anxiety, but they just know it does. So the first thing you do for 3-3-3, like I said, is find and list 3 things you can see. So I can see my water bottle, bulletin board, picture of my dad. Okay. Then find and list 3 things you can hear. It also works if you want to change that to like 3 things I can smell, what have you. And the last part, you move 3 parts of your body. I like to do the fingers. I find that helps me the most with anxiety. I'm going to give you a moment here so you can go ahead and try this out or write down your answer about it. All right, next I'm going to go over possible answers for your week 1 handout. And like I said earlier, I'll let you know which ones you can use word for word and which ones should be your answer. So these first 3 you can use word for word if you like. So the first 3 things you write is 3 things you learned about speech class so far, or 3 things you're excited about. So I wrote 3 main things that I know I talked about with speech class. So random speaking order is 1. 2, have choices for performing in class or filmed. And then 3, need to do speeches to pass. And notice again, none of these are complete sentences, and that's okay as long as I answer the question. Pause so you can write that, and then we'll move on to the next 3. All right, so the next 3 are about anxiety techniques. So you can either list or write 3 things you learned about them, or what your experience was practicing them, or if you have a different anxiety technique that you use and you enjoy, you can write that. So I wrote, as you can see, first I summarized what 3-3-3 is. You could absolutely take any one of these answers. Next, I wrote out what does EFT mean? It's emotional freedom technique. Pause on the end here so you can get these, and then I'll move on to number 3. So for number 3, I wrote my personal experience. So I wouldn't copy this one word for word. I would add your own. So I just wrote that 3-3-3 works better for me as a daily strategy, tapping only if I'm really anxious or I have a migraine. Go ahead and write what your third thing is. Okay, next, list or write 2 questions you still have about speech class. If you don't have 2 questions, you can either write 2 additional things you learned or 2 things you want me to know about you. One recommendation is you can tell me what your personal pronouns are. Mine are she and her, as you can see. And then I also wrote a question that I want to make sure I answer for you. So if I choose to film, will I lose points if my pet or brother interrupts? What if they're in the video? Am I going to get docked points? The answer is no. You will not get docked points for life distractions. Public speaking, a big part of it is learning to play through life's interruptions. Also, I grew up in a trailer with 6 people. There's no way my videos would have been absolutely silent. There would have been a brother in the background just kind of trolling, like, There would have been a cat, probably our Doberman. You get the idea. So I don't judge what's happening in your environment. I judge your speaking. All right. So finally, next week, we're going to start writing your introduction speech. And of course, I'll show you how. And the following week, you'll perform it. So at the end here, I would like you to please start brainstorming at least 2 things you want your classmates or myself to know about you. So for these answers, I would really suggest you write your own. It'll be strange if you have the exact same as me, possibly. So here's the 2 I wrote for an example. So I talked about, of course, my kitty. So my cat's a mutant. So I talked about that. And then the second thing that I would want people to know about me is I really value my friendships. I've had the same crew of friends since 7th grade, and the group thread gives me life. It makes my day. And we talk about things that I think no one else would. We're just that weird. All right. So at this point, I'm going to close out the part where I'm talking at you. As you know, I'm going to stay in the G Meet. So if you have any questions, sign on. At this point, you can talk with one another about what you've learned so far, or you can practice the strategies a little bit more, the anxiety ones. Or third thing, work on your work, get it in. I'll be in the Meet. You got this.